Hello everybody, I'm Tom Dorsey, President of Dorsey Wright & Associates. It's March 4th, 2011. If you're taking note, this is take 4, believe it or not. Usually we just do this in take 1. I got nothing on my shirt this week, but what I was thinking of, what I should have had was a normal distribution of bell curve here. And I want to talk about that for just a moment. This applies to the stock market. It also applies to option trading. Now, if you want to go back in time to see where the concept of the bell curve comes into play with the overall stock market, you have to go back, go to Google, and type in the theory of speculation. And that was written by Louis Bachelier in 1900 for his doctoral thesis in Paris at the Sorbonne University. And what he determined was that while the market was in flux, there was no way of determining statistical probabilities of the next move of the market. He said, in essence, but if you took a snapshot of the market, but there weren't cameras back then, but what he's saying is, if you took a snapshot of the market, stopped things in motion, you could in fact apply statistical probability to the market to determine the next highest probability where the market would move. And this is the beginning of the concept of option strategies and the thought process behind option strategies. It goes back to 1900. Now, when I go to the Nifty 50 and I create a normal distribution, a bell curve, think back to Statistics 101 in college, your normal distribution, which is made up of 6 standard deviations. Well, a good friend of mine, Jim Yates, one of the late great Jim Yates, created a methodology where he would take the optionable stock universe. He worked backwards through the Black-Scholes model to determine the volatility of the underlying stock that warranted a particular option price. That's how he got his distance between each one of those zones that he called them. So a normal distribution is made up of 6 standard deviations, equal in length. So if I were looking at men's heights in the world, what you would find is we're broken down into 6 standard deviations, a normal distribution. You'll find 66% of us, or the vast majority of men, will fall within 1 standard deviation above or below trend. There'll be some people who are too tall, some people who are too short. Now, if you look at a picture of the 4 of us who came to India on this adventure, you'll get an idea. And I think we can find a picture where Jay Gregnani and myself were standing in a picture with Scott DeRozier and Skip Carlton. You'll notice that Scott and Skip are probably around the 6'4" level, and Jay Gregnani and I are around the 5'9" level. We fall in the middle of the bell curve, and they fall in the curve to the right-hand side, which is too high. Now, if we had someone with us that were 3 feet tall, we'd almost have the whole dispersion of the bell curve. Now, if you take the overall stock market and you say, okay, I want to look at each individual stock's normal distribution, what you would do is calculate a standard deviation for the stock's price movement, let's say on a 90-day basis, and you would determine a stock would fall at a particular level. Perfectly normal or neutral would be dead center of the bell curve. If a stock, considering its own volatility, had gotten too high, you might see it 3 standard deviations above trend. If it had gotten too low, you might see it 3 standard deviations below trend. And what you do then is take each individual stock. You'll see a big bell curve. And let's say we place XYZ stock on the far right-hand side because it's too high. We place ABC on the left-hand side because it's too low. We place CBS in the center because it's just right. And we take all of the Nifty 50 and we place them under this bell curve where they should be, considering their own volatility, and you get a beautiful picture of the overall market. Now, what you have here, what I'm looking at on my screen, we're going to put up on Stock Easy for you to look at, is you'll see a relatively normal to oversold market. What's happened now is the Nifty 50 has moved to the left-hand side here. You have only a few stocks on the right-hand side, which is the overbought side of the ledger, and you have most of the stocks, I would say, in the 1 standard deviation below, 2 and 3 standard deviations below trend. So if I looked at the overall India market and you said, Tom, what's the probability over the intermediate term of where this market would likely go, then I would have to say the probability is higher, because what the market wants to seek 66% of the time is normality, which would be most stocks in the center, some too high, some too low, but very normally distributed. So right now we're in a condition where you have an oversold market. Now, one of the things that we do, and you'll be able to see on Stock Easy, is that on the short-term relative strength of the chart, If the chart pattern the stock symbol is green, the short-term relative strength is positive. If it's red, the short-term relative strength is negative. What you'll see here is mostly red. So in other words, everything is still filtering to the left-hand side, although this week we got a 4% bounce in the market. Overall this year, you're down 10% in the market. I would assume by Monday, considering what's happening with the Dow Jones today, you'll probably have an off day. But the way to get good perspective in the market is to look at this normal distribution on a regular basis. It's on our system. What you can do is go into your system at DWA, take all 50 chart stocks on the Nifty 50 or anything else you want to look at, put it into a portfolio, and then simply click distribution. It will give you a beautiful bell curve, and you'll be able to gain great perspective in the market by looking at that. So I want you to go on Stock Easy, look at this normal distribution that we're going to put up this afternoon, and it'll give you a beautiful perspective of what's going on with the overall Nifty 50. We'll talk to you next week.